Johnny, how you feeling today, man?
I feel amazing.
We are at your apartment, and this is technically Boston?
It's Saugus, Massachusetts, yeah.
Okay, we'll call it Boston.
We'll call it Boston. Everybody, in the feds, everybody does that. You could be from Connecticut, you could be from Vermont, Rhode Island, everybody calls it Boston, right?
Yeah, you're in the New England car.
That's right.
Yeah, so you got me outside the studio all the way here, but you're not kidnapping me or anything.
No, nothing like that going on these days, pal.
Yeah, well, it was great to connect with you. Shout out to Travis Cullen, who was on the show, for introducing us, and thank you for responding to the DM to make this happen.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure. You're the big time. I'm in the big time now, right?
Yeah, this might be one of the biggest interviews you've done.
Yeah. I'm excited about it.
You just got out fairly recently, too.
So I got out a year ago, almost a year to the day.
And the final count was 25 or 20?
27 years,
27
right?
years. It's a long time, and it's going to be interesting to see later in this episode what that transition was like and what's different. Did you grow up in Massachusetts?
So I grew up in East Boston, yep.
East Boston.
East Boston.
What was that like? Did you have your family? Did you have siblings, mom and dad?
So it's idyllic, right? And I had my mother, Barbara, my father, Charlie, my two brothers, Ronnie and Charlie, and typical middle-class home. And, my father always taught a strong work ethic. My mother, a strong religious ethic, right? And, I would just say that just as average could be, right? And, in that, area, right, in family area, it was just everybody was like us. Nobody was doing any better. Nobody was doing any worse. It was just basically, very, our neighborhood is very tight-knit, or was at that point in time. Everything changes. We had that conversation. But at that time, it was very tight-knit. My cousins lived next door to us. Cousins lived across the street. And, in that day and time, you were cousins with people that weren't even your cousins. Your uncle wasn't really your uncle. But, this is your Uncle Ronnie. So it was very, that differs a little bit that I could see. The dynamic is, neighborhoods were much closer, and my neighborhood was very close. And it's something that I hold, very near and dear to my heart. And, I love East Boston. I'm all about East Boston.
What did your parents do for work?
So my mother worked at the neighborhood health center, and my father was a machinist. He was a maintenance machinist who worked on both lathes and computers, like the old-time machines and the newer machines. And, very talented guy. He was a troubleshooter. Sometimes he used to work for this place, Norelco, and he used to say, he'd have the Norelco uniform on 24/7. He goes, if it wasn't for Norelco, kid, I'd be bollocky. You know what I'm saying? So that's because that's all he, it's kind of all he wore. And he told me that he would go months at a time just reading novels until something broke down. Then he might be there for 2-3 nights in a row, troubleshooting and, resolving the issue with the machine. So
who do you think you're closer to, your mom or your dad?
Man, it's really hard to say, especially at this time because, I lost both of them while I was in prison. And, it's really tough. So my father was my best friend. Okay. And, my mother was, somebody that, I held very dear to I love my mother, and my new philosophy going forward all the time is, and it's so redundant, people are probably going to shut the podcast off because my philosophy now is do something once a day to make my mother proud. So I have my mother with me every day. And so both of them, it's hard to pick, who I was closer to. I was very close with both of them, you know what I'm saying? And my father treated me like his son in the house, but outside the house, I was his best friend. And that's kind of how it was, And my mother was a homebody, and, she was the toughest one. When we had a problem with a family in East Boston one time, she said, they want a war. And she banged the table and she said, they came to the right place. And I was like, okay, Ma. I guess this is the way we're doing this, So she was a very strong woman and, just the greatest lessons in life I learned from her and my father. So, and, it's hard to really square, my actions because I talk a lot about loyalty and we had talked about that. And, everybody that knows me would say people come up to me in the street and you're the solidest guy I know on the planet. To be in that conversation is amazing, right? So to me, it's I always say that it's humbling, and I say that all the time. But I have to square kind of those, reviews with that I kind of maybe, gave my loyalty to other people over my family. And that's where I'm at today with it. So that those are feelings that I have to come to terms with, you know what I'm saying? Because my parents are gone. My middle brother, Ronnie, is gone. So, and those are, that was the price of this marathon I ran,
Now, that concept of loyalty, did you get that from your parents at all? Or would that come later on when you started, it going down a different path?
So, it's an interesting question, right? Because we're all socialized by our family, right? Mm-hmm. So in my house, I know today, in today's day and age, it's a different age, what's silence in the house, what's said in this house stays in this house. But that's what we were brought up with. And I know, there's nothing underhanded at my house. It was just when we have conversations, we don't talk about it to other people. This is our family. I'm going to say business. I mean, it wasn't, a mob family, but I'm saying our family business was our family business. And those values were instilled in me at a very young age, that when your brother talks to you about something, that's it. Your mother says something to you, we don't talk about things outside the house. So I think in terms of loyalty, right, when you have to kind of juxtapose the kind of two loyalties that I had, right? So, but I never spoke out of school, and I try not to in my everyday life. And I think those are lessons, and valuable lessons, that were, handed down to me from my parents.
Do you think that if those lessons weren't handed down to you, your outcome later on might have been different? Sure,
of course. Don't you think? I mean, especially for me, I am my family, right? I am the lessons that I learned. Your socialization. If my mother said, if anything ever happens, you dial 911. I mean, I would have thought that was what we do, is dial 911, right? But I mean, I wasn't taught those lessons at my house. Somebody broke into my house one time. I remember it vividly, and we went looking for the person that broke into our house, and we found them. Wow. We didn't call the cops.
Were both of your parents Italian, or just one side?
I'm English, Irish, French, and Italian, right? So it's an eclectic mix, right? Mm-hmm. But European. But both of my grandmothers were Italian. And so our neighborhood was an Italian neighborhood, and everything that we did, the common denominator was that we were Italian. Yeah, sure. So I say I'm more identified with being Italian than anything else.
And your family or your direct parents were never associated with like criminal organizations?
No. My father, my father used to hang out at the bar room. He tended bar, and he used to hang, he hung out down Central Square, and he knew a lot of people that were involved in, let's say, other things other than being family men, right? But, my father had the greatest line. My father had the best one-liners, the best. Like one of them was, I'm hell when I'm well and I'm seldom sick. You know what I'm saying? But he used to say, John, I ain't bad, but the bad don't fuck with me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that was, everybody knew my father as Charlie Chacha, and everybody knew and respected my father. And, I just, he gave me that name, and I try to live up to that. Because nobody ever said anything other than, hey, Chach, what's up? Hey, Chach, so.
Did you want to become like your dad? Did you kind of idolize being like him? Or did you have a different mindset in mind for your future?
So that's an interesting question, right? So, of course, I idolized my father, and, my older brothers I looked up to. And, so I don't know if there's a short answer to that. I will say that if we moved a little to the right of that question and we say that I wanted to be like my brothers, I remember I was always Ronnie and Charlie's brother until I got a little older and started to do crazy stuff. And then everybody was like, watch out, those are Johnny's brothers. Like, watch out, don't do nothing to them. Be careful, before it was like, be careful, that's Charlie and Ronnie's little brother. But then I became kind of the big brother. So did I want to be like my father? Of course, I always want to be like my father. My father was a neighborhood guy, the epitome, the quintessential neighborhood guy. Hung down the social club and hung out with his friends, always had a beer in his hand. I'd probably seen my father drunk once in my life, like, and not falling down drunk, but visibly drunk. But he was just a guy that, and he used to say, John, you know what it is about the drinking? I don't miss the drinking. I miss the kibitzing, the camaraderie. You know what I'm saying? So he was a neighborhood guy. He was a barroom guy. And that was, that's what fueled our neighborhoods, especially East Boston, when I was a kid. So did I want to be like my father? I love my father. He was my best friend on planet Earth. So you can, kind of deduce your own, you can have your own deductions from that.
So before you became that guy where everyone, like your brothers knew that, or people knew that they were Johnny's brother, what would you say you were described like as a kid before you became that kind of polarizing figure?
I like that word, polarizing. I like it.
Picked it up in the back of my mind just now. I've been practicing.
So vocabulary is big with me. I love vocabulary, right?
I won some points.
So I'm always working on it.
I'll get something good at dinner tonight now.
No, listen, dinner's on me and Chris from Volari, of course. But no, so I was a hockey player. Really, I mean, a lot of people in my neighborhood would know me as a hockey player because that's what has been like kind of telegraphed to me from people that since I started, since I've been out of prison and since I started doing, engaging in forums like these, right, and talking to other people about my story. I was an athlete, I was just a hockey player, but I don't remember being as good as, the legend is always larger than life, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, in retrospect, when people think about me and they have this concept of who I was and who I've become, I think, my early childhood has been romanticized a little bit and kind of been tweaked a little bit, but I was a decent hockey player. So people would know me as a hockey player.
Why do you think you never pursued that further, like as a career? Were you not passionate about it? Were you pushed into it by your family at all?
So I was never really pushed into anything. I loved hockey. I was a big Rick Middleton fan as a kid, you know what I'm saying? And I loved the Bruins, and I still love the Bruins today, and I still love anything Boston, you know what I'm saying? But I was never pushed into anything. I think I played hockey on my own, but I just wasn't good enough to pursue it. I was good in my neighborhood, and I was good. I had, I guess, some, bright moments on the ice, and in playing in Canada and playing in Quebec, and I mean, it kind of ended where my philosophy was: even if we lose every game, we're going to win every fight. So I just, I always talk about like a fear of succeeding, and I don't know if that I even was cognizant of that when I was a child, but I always had like fear of school, fear of like math. So I never really thought I could be good at it. So I started to devise a way where I could get around that, if that answers your question.
Yeah. So going into high school, right? What's the atmosphere like? Is it a big public school? Are you getting into trouble, or are you more of a quiet, reserved kid, or are you starting to become the Johnny everyone knows about?
So I'm starting to become the Johnny everybody knows about, right? And I think I had some instances where I think I backed down from a fight in high school one time, right? And this was like a troubling event for like the next 25 years. You know what I'm saying? So, and I was never going to be that guy again. You know what I'm saying? Anytime anybody ever said, I'm just striking first, I'm grabbing something, I'm just, I think maybe that event, and that's funny that you just triggered that when you had that question, So I became the Johnny that everybody kind of knows from the past, from, my days on the street. And, I began to do drugs. I was smoking pot, and that kind of played a little bit of a role in my life. But that was short-lived because I got sober, and I got sober, clean, and then I started working on becoming an arch criminal. That was the next phase of my life. But I really wanted to be like the most dangerous guy on the street. I wanted to be the biggest guy, the toughest guy. That really intrigued me. And I found out that, somebody had mentioned it today, I had said it before, that there was a lot of negative actions that got a lot of positive reinforcement, and like violence was that for me. And, being the guy that struck first, I hit somebody with a shovel, or hit somebody with a hammer, or, just we didn't care really, they had a pistol, was shooting it. Like I thought that was like where my success was, and it's so short-sighted, right? But I just thought that, that was my vehicle, and I didn't have to learn math. I didn't have to go to school. That year off I took when, my mother and father said, there's no way around high school, John. You got to go through it. And they were the shot callers in my family. So, I went through it. But once I was done with high school, I kind of went on my own a little bit.
Do you think if that first instant that you were talking about with you kind of not standing up for yourself that first time, if that never happened, do you think you go down the path you did?
It's an interesting question, right? It's all hypotheticals, right? And we kind of live on those. Would it have been different? Yeah, well, I probably would have had 3 kids, been fat and out of shape, and my wife yelling at me to go to work today. I mean, who knows, right? I'm saying, but I really don't know. But it was a dramatic shift in my life after that.
So when would you say, how old were you? When was the first time you got yourself into some trouble? Was that in high school? Like what you were just describing, beating people with hammers, shovels, that was all high school Johnny doing all that?
So no, it wasn't. That was afterwards. But I brought like brass knuckles to school one day and got suspended for it.
Why would you do that?
The quintessential question, right? Who knows? You know what I'm saying? Just that part of me was like, this is who I'm going to be. I'm going to stop being that guy, And then I got into a fight in school, so I got into like a few fights in school. So that kind of was the impetus, right, for where I would be after school.
Did you know in high school that you weren't going off to college?
Yeah, that was a foregone conclusion. I wasn't, I was doing drugs in high school, and then I stopped doing drugs, and then I just wanted to be that guy.
I wonder what would have happened if you didn't stop doing drugs, because that could have led to a different lifestyle too.
I'm grateful every day that I don't use drugs. And, funny that me and you were in the same place at different points of our lives, right? We were in Danbury, and I started smoking K2. As crazy as that might sound, right? Mm-hmm. So, and I stopped doing it because I had a conversation with myself, and I'm, listen, you're not that guy. If guys from your neighborhood seen you today, they wouldn't believe it. So, and I stopped doing it. But the craziest thing about addiction is sometimes I think that might be a good idea to do that again. So that's how I know for me that my philosophy now is that I got enough fucking problems in my life. I certainly don't need that, And at the end of the day, really, the reality is I don't have any problems. But there's something I say to myself and I whisper to myself, right? And we were talking about gratitude. And, there's degrees of gratitude to me. And this is why I'm so grateful for everything I have. Listen, my humble little apartment, you almost barely fit on the first floor, right? On the second floor. But it's beautiful to me. I love it. Because you know what? There was a guy that was a dumpster diving today. Just picture this in your mind. And he found a blueberry muffin in a package. And it wasn't opened. And he ate it. And he was like, I don't have to get sick. I can have something to eat. God is so good. So juxtapose that with your problems today. And tell me you can't be like a zillion % grateful.
It could always be worse.
Always. A zillion times worse.
So you get out of high school. You end up graduating because your parents wanted you to graduate. It wasn't an option.
Wasn't an option.
What do you do next, right after high school?
I'm in the streets at that point. I'm selling drugs. I'm finding ways to make money because I wanted to do the least amount of work to make the most amount of money. And, that was my goal. So, I got arrested for selling dime bags, right? I had dime. I used to lay out on a chair on the corner. I had my sneakers I used to take off because, it was important to have tanned feet when I was a kid, right? So I had one sneaker with the dime bags in it and one sneaker with the money in it. So you came by and I was like, yeah, just grab one and put the money in the shoe. You know what I'm saying? So I got arrested for doing that. Kind of a little out in the open, but that's how I was when I was a kid. Who knows where the mind was at that point in my life. So I got arrested for selling dime bags. And the 2 detectives were like, tell me who gave you the pot. Tell me who, and it was a couple of my friends. Well, obviously I won't name them now either, right? But I didn't say nothing, obviously. And they came down and bailed me out. And, I was like, oh, that's cool. They bailed me out. I'm good. So all it took was that. I'm back out of jail. I'm good, So I just had this skewed concept of that I could do whatever I wanted to do. I'm just going to do whatever I want to do.
Did you see people around you throwing in those scenarios, throwing people under the bus, where you refused to do, like just that small instance of they wanted you to rat on your friends?
No, well, I know, yeah. So I'm sure people have, right? I know many instances where people have, But my thing always is that my neighborhood's small. You know what I mean? And I would never, I couldn't I love my father and my mother and my brothers, right? I could never, do that to them. I could never ever take the focus off myself, put it on somebody else. Because in my neighborhood, that was the worst thing you could be.
And it's interesting because it plays such an integral part in your story later on, like the more trouble you get and ultimately end up in prison. That's why I asked you those questions, because it's going to be interesting to see how you evolved and how you still stayed to that, mantra and character even throughout everything. So how does someone like you're like a low-level street drug dealer, escalate into, like the Hells Angels? It didn't even sound like you were interested in bikes in high school at all.
Right. So how do we make that quantum leap?
Yeah,
right.
That's a huge leap.
So from dime bags to keys of methamphetamine. So I have to preface this, and I always do. Right. So the club didn't make me do anything. You know what I mean? I use the club as a vehicle. Right. So what happens is, as I get into the club, I'm the guy that ran around my house going like this as a kid. So I always had a kind of a fascination with motorcycles. And to be honest with you, when we talk about my father, the first bike that my father bought me, I'm sure I hounded the balls off him to get it for me, was a bike that looked like a motorcycle. It was a pedal bike with front and back shocks. And people in my neighborhood that know me will remember that bike. It was like, one of a kind. And so I always had that fascination with motorcycles. My Uncle Bobby drove a motorcycle. He lived down the street from me, and I always had a motorcycle, and I was like, wow, motorcycle, you know what I'm saying? So I did have a fascination with motorcycles, which is really odd because I never really, was into motorcycles per se as I kind of progressed and traversed through like that time period between high school and the Hells Angels. But I remember when I had like a claim, I got a claim on my back. I had a lawyer in Boston, and a couple of my friends were riding motorcycles. And I was like, I want to get a motorcycle. I just want to go. I'm going to go to the lawyer's office. I'm going to get a loan from him, make it toward my case that I'm going to have a settlement, and I'm getting a bike. So I did that, and I got a motorcycle. And, I went into Lynn to get some accessories, and, there was a guy there, and he was like, hey, what's up? I got some accessories. He owned a motorcycle shop, and my Uncle Bobby ran security for one of the biggest nightclubs in Massachusetts at that time, was the Palace. It had like 30 clubs in one building. It was amazing. And, guys in the club had their parties there. And that's kind of how I intersected with guys in the club,
How long does it take to build a relationship just to get to the point where you're able to be in that area? Because you're a new guy with a bike and you're young. You're in your early 20s?
Very early 20s, yeah.
Maybe not even your 20s, yeah.
Well, early 20s.
Okay.
Early 20s. But the answer to that, the simple answer, right, Ian, is everybody knew who I was. Everybody knew my family. I wasn't a guy that had to be vetted. They knew. Guys knew, you know what I'm saying? Like, I was a guy from East Boston. I was, had a little bit of a reputation. So it wasn't me going to them. They were like, hey, why don't you wear a security shirt and come hang out at the party with us? All right, sounds good.
Was it common for someone that young to join a club like the Hells Angels? Is that a common thing?
So I'm sure there's age requirements, right? But I was over that threshold. But when I got into the club, I was the youngest guy. And now I heard somebody say I was the youngest guy in the club. I was the youngest guy in Massachusetts when I got in the club.
No, I've read or I've heard interviews where they say that the club doesn't actually have like an actual leader of it. There's separate entities, and that there's people that step up, but there's not like a main person. Yeah. Is that the case? Is that true?
I mean, you can interpret that any way you want, right? Okay. But I know that I'm a member of the club when I'm a member, when I'm getting in the club, whatever the case. And, I didn't become a Hell's Angel or get in the club, right? I'm not the guy that is going to like listen to everybody else, right? So I'm almost, I don't, the club's a larger entity than me. Mm-hmm. I'm just Johnny Bart. I got a story. Part of my story is I'm a Hell's Angel, right? And I was in the club. And I just think the things I did on my own volition. So I don't know of any guy like that is in the club or was in the club that is a guy that blindly takes orders from people. So it's always, it's always fascinating to me to hear people's perception of the club. So I don't know if nobody ever told me what to do. I mean, I've took a lot of initiative on my own to do certain things because I wanted you to think I was, listen, let me do it. Let me take care of this.
That's so interesting that that it operates in that way, or at least it did back in that time. Because
it did for me.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that. I think they have, because TV shows, movies, and whatnot have made it a certain way.
Right.
And it's not necessarily the case all the time, and everyone has a different perspective. Were you like kind of like a liability, being that like young, hot-headed maybe type of individual?
So I think the distinction you could draw when you ask that question is, a lot of people, I had a lot of respect from a lot of people. And, the most amazing thing for me, Ian, is in hindsight, when I look at this, right, is like, for instance, girls that like I had a crush on, like girls that I liked, and like girls that, if they wanted a boyfriend, I would have been it in a minute, even for a little while. So they would write me letters and be like, I remember you were so nice to me. You always looked out for me. You took care of me and you never ever tried to do anything. And I'm like, only if you knew I was in love with you, like, you know what I'm saying? But I guess my point to that is, people have memories of me that I was a protector to people. So, I mean, I wasn't really that guy that was doing disrespectful things. I knew that I represented the club, right? And that meant a lot to me. You know what I'm saying? I represented my family name. I represented myself. So I was crazy with people that I thought deserved for me to be crazy with them. Not for people that were my allies and my friends and people that I respected and knew. I was always, I was always trying to be the best guy that I could, of course. You know what I'm saying? I'm not a bully. I never acted as a bully. I don't think anyway, you know what I'm saying? And the way that I see it from my perspective is I never bullied anybody. One guy called me down his shop one day. It was like, hey, I want you to have this $10,000 in this pistol. I'm going to, rob some people. Do you know these people? I'm like, I don't know them. So if I have any problems, I'm good. Yeah, you're good. I didn't call him. He called me and said, I just want to give you this package of money. And like at that point in time, when that happened, and this guy later wound up headless in the harbor. I remember reading not to do with me, but I remember reading that in the Boston Herald about, I don't know, 8 to 10 years into my bid. And I was like, oh shit, that's that. But when that happened, when things like that happened for me, I was like, I'm doing all the right things. This is like, nothing could be better than this. Some guy just gave me 10 racks. And she just said, do you know this guy? And I'm like, nah, don't worry about it. You're good.
Wow.
So that was, to me, that was like, Fortune 500. I got this going on.
Now, when you were moving drugs, are you allowed to do your own separate thing, or was that all tied under the club?
I mean, it's another interesting question, right? Mm-hmm. But I sold drugs on my own.
Okay.
I never derived capital for anybody else. I don't want to give you what I got to give you anything for.
Yeah. Now, are you allowed to use drugs yourself when you're in a club?
I never used drugs. I was sober, right?
Yeah.
When I got into the club.
Because I know like some like mobs and stuff have some rules about not using drugs. But I guess you didn't have to worry about that because
I didn't use drugs.
You didn't use drugs. So when you were selling, how old were you at that period when you're actually in the club and you're moving weight? So
I remember, you know what? It's the craziest thing too, because when I got into the club, that's when I started to have problems. I remember I had this connection for Valiums when I was a kid to sell Valiums. I had like my whole furnace at my house was non-functional, but it was filled with Valiums. If only my parents knew. And I was given like little baggies of 100 till about 15, 20 people in East Boston. And then every week I'd give them another bag. They'd give me the money. It was the best thing in the whole world. I was paying like 10 cents a piece for them. And I was getting like $1 each for them. It was like, I found a way to print money. It was amazing. But now I was just a neighborhood drug dealer. Mm-hmm. That's what I did. I sold drugs. That's how I derived capital, derived income from selling drugs. And, when I got into the club, I moved on to bigger things. You know what I mean? But bigger quantities. But my thing was, whenever you're into bigger quantities of drugs, larger sums of money, and if you don't have a machine gun, you're stupid. You know what I'm saying? People are going to try to rob you. I know people were robbing other people, asking me if it was all right. I know I wasn't above that. I never had a problem, but I always was ready for that.
So why do you think you ultimately wanted to even join the club then? If you had your own thing going and you were you're doing well, you know, and you knew that going bigger would mean bigger problems, or was it more of a hobby for you?
So I just think it was like, you know, I mean, I thought it was the ultimate step that you could make. You know what I'm saying? So for me, I just thought it was, in other words, you're doing a podcast with so many million followers, and now you're doing a podcast with 30 million. Like you're instead of being known in Massachusetts, now you're known all over the world. So that was I think I took that next step thinking that, you know, I wanted to be an arch criminal, and I thought I found the home.
Yeah. Wow, that's interesting. So then what happens next after that? Once you join, how old were you exactly when you were joined?
So I think I was, man, I'd be lying if I told you. So I got in the club around 1996. I was born in 68.
So
I could do trigonometry, probably a problem, but I can't do simple math.
1996, you said? So
Yeah.
you were 30 when you were in the
So
club.
1995, say, because I went to jail in 96.
That's when I was born.
Yeah.
Oh, you were only in the club officially for a year before.
Not even, right?
Holy
Before I
cow.
went to prison.
Wow.
So
So how does it make you feel like when there's all these like headlines and stuff about, like I read the news articles from when you got arrested.
Yeah.
They made it seem like associated way even bigger than what it might have actually been.
sure, you know, of course, everybody has their agenda, right? And rightly so, right? I'm saying if I'm a reporter for a newspaper, I want to sensationalize something. I don't want to just tell you, well, you know, this guy, he was a pretty bad guy, you know, and I don't know, he sold some drugs. I mean, you want to optimize your audience,
Yeah.
right? That's what we want to do today, right?
You have to, yeah.
Right? I want to optimize my audience. I want to sell some shirts that say neighborhood legend on them, right? I mean, so of course, I mean, everybody has their agenda. So I think the trick in life is to not be mad at the people that I wanted to be the biggest arch criminal in the world, right? I don't know if I wanted to go worldwide, but of course, I want to maximize my audience. I want everybody to know who I was. So I'm sure that, you know, government entities, they have to justify budgets, right? You know, reporters have to justify why they're working for a newspaper or a media arm, right? So it's understandable.
Well, in a way, that's what you wanted. You know, you wanted that
100%.
flashy-
I loved when they,
Yeah.
this is really, this is great.
Yeah,
When they read this, they're
larger
going to
than
think, but I never thought that about myself. You understand? You know, everybody else was convinced that I was this, you know, maniac, right? But, you know, and I always talk about that, you know, the role for me it was easy, but it wasn't, I still, you know, today I think I'm where I'm supposed to be, you know, as opposed to back then, I was, you know, I don't know if that was the right career path for me, you know, but I got a 35 years sentence, and I kind of, you know, pondered on that for a little. I had a little time to think about that.
How long did it officially take you to be patched into the club?
So, I mean, everybody always gives you a time frame and this and that. I think I'll give you the words of a psychologist I had. It's a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, so in your case, how long did
In
it
my
take you?
case, it was, you know, shorter than most.
Shorter
not as
than
long as many.
And that was only because of your reputation.
Well, I mean, there's nothing I didn't need to be vetted to get in the club, right?
Yeah.
Everybody knows who I am. So I think so this is how things work in life, right? I'm saying, so we can, you know, project this question onto any question in life, right? I was introduced to you by somebody. So we have a little warm market that we created. We talked, you know what I mean? You're not meeting me on the street for the first time, right? So if you did, you'd be a little leery. If somebody ran up to you and said, "Hey, you're Ian Bick, will you give me an interview?" And you're like, whoa, hold on, okay, so what's your story? You know, who is this guy? You think he's crazy, right? So you could kind of just juxtapose those two questions with each other, right? People know who I was, so, I mean, I didn't have a problem moving in any circle.
Back then, in Massachusetts, was it just the Hells Angels, or were there other clubs?
I mean, there were other clubs. I'm saying I got my cases for killing another guy in another club, right? I'm saying, so is that, were we leading up to that?
Yeah, so I guess there was other clubs.
Yeah.
But was there other options for you to join at the time?
So, and you know, that is the most, I'm going to say interesting question, but I think it's the most transparent, right? So if I grew up in Florida, right, I wouldn't have been a Hell's Angel. I've been an outlaw, right? Right? I'm saying it's a geographical thing. You know, if I grew up in Texas, I'd be a bandito, right? And, you know, if that's what I wanted to pursue, you know? So I think it's a very geographical question. And I think it's a question it's not so complex. It's, you know, a lot of these questions that we ask even like questions I ask myself, are very rudimentary. And they have very rudimentary answers. And I think that's one of them.
So you said you wanted to become like this arch criminal type person. You don't just do that by moving weight and moving drugs.
Right.
What were some other things you were doing to become that person?
I mean, you know, my case is about, you know, the cases that I have in court that, you know, my friend's family had a problem one night and we drove as fast as we could there. I grabbed the first object, which is a shovel, and I started beating a guy down with a shovel, you know? So, I mean, I pulled a guy over on the side of the road and started beating him with a hammer through his helmet. You know what I mean? I ran a guy over and killed him, you know, deliberately, right? Those are part of my case. Those are things that I have done, right? So in the very brass tacks of things, I perpetrated acts of violence. I'm a murderer, right? So you could label me as that. It's not really hard. I'm saying my paperwork is there. You can find my case, you know?
Now,
so.
Are these individuals, are these innocent? Like, it's not someone on the street that you're walking by and you just attack them with a hammer.
Right.
Like, these are provoked scenarios, situations, or part of the lifestyle that you are living.
A perceived enemy, right?
Yeah.
So let's say this. If me and you play chess, right, Ian? And you put me in checkmate, I'm not going to flip the board over. I'm not going to call the cop, tell him you're cheating, right? So if you put me in checkmate, you know, you put me in check. We're playing a game, right? We're engaged in something that we both know is real and happening, okay? So this isn't news to you and it's not news to me. So at that point in my life, I was engaged in, you know, for my last year of my life before I went to prison, I was hunting people.
Do you, when you think back on it now, how does that make you feel?
Okay, and this is the most interesting question, right? And this is the dramatic shift I've had in my life. Because for me, I mean, we're all shaped by our own experiences. I'm sure we can say that. So I had events happen in my life. So like my brother Ronnie dying. And probably one of the most traumatic events that happened to me based upon my, you know, physical and mental reaction that I had. I had episodic depression. I was, you know, the ground was, you know, I went in, they were calling me one Sunday morning to make a phone call. Then, you know, you could ask till you're blue in the face to make a phone call. You'll never get one. When they're inviting you to make a phone call, it's catastrophe has struck in your life, especially when you're in jail. So when I made that call and I had just got off the phone with my father, I had a ticket in Lee County Penitentiary. I was running a basketball ticket. And I just got the lines from my father. And 15 minutes later, they're telling me to call my father back. You know, I mean, and for people that don't understand it, there's payphones. There's a one-way call. You make it. Nobody can ever call you back on the payphone. They would have to call the administration. The administration would actually have to accept the call, would have to call the case manager. It's a chain of events. And this is 15 minutes later. So, you know, I didn't even walk to the counselor's office. I kind of like vibrated there. Because I thought my mother died. I knew it was a death. And when they told me that my brother Ronnie had died, I just remember like coming out of whatever I was in saying to my father, no. And then like I was like the case manager was giving me tissue. I was crying my eyes out unconsciously. I just remember coming to like crying, going sobbing, you know, and saying no, you know. So what I had to do was process these feelings in prison where I wasn't going to the wake, I wasn't going to the funeral, I was talking to people. No, this is my 39-year-old brother at the time. That is like one of my best friends, and he would do anything, fly anywhere, come see me, whatever I needed, I had. And, it was traumatic for me. And what I had to do from that point on was juxtapose these feelings that I had, that my mother had. She was distraught. It almost drove my mother to mental illness. So I had to put these feelings side by side when I engineered these feelings in other people. When I took somebody's brother, somebody's son, right? And it's a hard feeling to come to grips with, because I just 5 seconds ago told you, I'm a murderer, I'm this and that, right? But I have to square those feelings today, right? Because I'm not any younger. You know what I'm saying? I'm looking for extra innings, overtime. That's what I always say. But at some point in time, right? I mean, do we pay for these sins that we made? And I know I was contrite when I was going to go to prison. I didn't want to go to prison, but ignorance wasn't a defense, right? So, yeah, I feel bad that I took somebody's life, that I engineered those feelings in other people that had nothing to do with it. Like my mother. If somebody engineered those feelings in my mother, I'd hunt them down and try to hurt them, right? Which would be, perpetuating the same, conduct. But no, I feel, I'm contrite about that. So as best I can, right? I lost my mother and father. I got to deal with those feelings. So it's a lot of feelings that I just try to do the best I can with that today. You know what I'm saying? And like I always say, I try to do things once a day that makes my mother proud, right? So that's what I do. That's my new philosophy. And, somebody made a comment the other night after I did a podcast saying that, this guy talks about this murder and this and that, right? And everybody can have their opinion, right? I'm sitting in this chair today, like, making my story public to people, right? So of course they can have those, and I'm not mad at by any stretch of the imagination, because you're welcome to have your own opinions and stuff. So I mean, I was that guy, right? Like I'm not that guy today, right? I try not to be, right? Because old habits die hard. Like I don't want to kill anybody, but when I'm in my car sometimes and they talk about road rage, I can see why that happens.
Those feelings that you were just expressing that you experienced when your brother died, do you think if you experienced those feelings before getting into that life, you never would have gotten into it or even did those acts to begin with?
It's a great question. And I'd have to say, on its face, I probably wouldn't engage in any of those activities or in that conduct, that course of conduct. Yeah. In hindsight, Ian, I'm saying, hindsight sees 20/20. And I always say that we can only live life going forward, only understand it in reverse, right? So sitting here today at my kitchen table, right? I could say, I wouldn't have did that. But would I have? I don't know. But I'm saying I would like to think that I'd have, live a prudent lifestyle where I wouldn't want to experience the negative consequences I had to go through on one hand, but one hand, I am who I am because of that.
No, we were just talking, or you were just saying about how, like eventually do you ever have to face the consequences of those actions? Do you feel like that, a 35-year prison sentence equals, or acts as off taking someone's life? That was a part of that lifestyle?
You're asking from my perspective or the people?
Your perspective.
My perspective is, it's a great question. And my perspective is that, I don't think anybody should be given prison time for, I think that for murder, if somebody, we talk all the time about, perpetrating acts against minors, right? And we hate those type of people in jail, right? I think like my perspective is different. So my humble opinion, if you kill somebody, you probably should get killed for it. Right? And then, I'm grateful that didn't happen to me, right? I'm saying an eye for an eye, but do I feel that way today? I'm not sure. It's, it's a convoluted bunch of thoughts I'm having about just thought-provoking question. Can we finish this interview in about 3-4 hours? Let me take a walk.
No, I got to keep you on your toes.
You are. Very good. But I mean, so the short answer is was 35 years enough? As I'm sitting here with you today, my prison sentence flew by. But when I was doing it and I was waking up in the middle of the night and I was learning patience and I learned a lot and I've made such dramatic change in my life. So, I mean, I guess that, the people, I don't like to talk about myself insofar as, I'm the best guy in the world, I'm this, I'm that, right? Other people can tell you that story. I can only tell you about other people and the impact they've had on my life, right? But so other people are going to have to make a determination. Wow, this guy, I don't know, you have to make your own determination. But like, for example, he's changed. He's doing a great job. He's doing a lot of community service. So I think that, but is that worth, if that was your mother, if that was your father, if that was your son, if that was my brother, would I think that was just? I don't have the answer to that question, I guess.
So this person you murdered was in a rival motorcycle club.
Yeah.
And how old was he? What are the details of?
44 years old.
And you guys got into an encounter that night?
No, I just ran him over and killed him.
And this was someone that you had to take care of on your own regard.
The thing is, Ian, here's the way, and you can call it a justification. You can call it anything you want to call it. I'm not an apologist insofar as my actions are my actions. Am I contrite about it? I wish it didn't happen, but there's no way I can go back and change the past, right? So what I would say is, if you're my friend, Ian, right, and I know that people are actively looking to cause harm to you, I'm going to try to eliminate the threat. That's the way I felt about it. So I felt, as contrite as I am today, I felt that I was doing the right thing back then.
And that's a totally fair answer, because no one knows what happened that night other than you and the other people that were involved. So after that happens, this happened at night, are you caught right then and there, or what happens next? Are you on the run?
I remember running as fast as I can, right? I remember running, right? And so there's fences in this place. I just get out of the street, get into these yards, and the fences are like waist high. So I climbed a few of them, the first. Then the rest, I just ran as fast as I could and flipped over them. Really, honest to God. So, and I remember there was these people in this yard. They were like having like a barbecue. It was like in July, right? And I remember this kid, like if somebody ever came into my yard, I'd be like, yo, what the fuck? Yo, get. So he came up to me and he was like, hey, and then like he kind of looked at me and seen like, yo, this guy is on not a mission, the mission. Leave this guy alone. He was like horrified. It must have been bloody. I was a mess, right? I was running as fast as I could into fences and just, falling over them. So I remember when darkness hit, right? And I was in this yard and I was like, it was quiet. It was still, I was good. I was under the cover of darkness. I was under the cover in a little bit of a brush maybe in somebody's yard, and nobody had detected me there. And I was just there. And I remember seeing a guy, I was looking in his window and I seen a guy with a cup of coffee watching a TV program, and I could hear it. And I remember just sitting there like this. And I remember saying to myself, John, your fucking life will never be that easy again. I just knew it and I felt it, and I was like, this is the beginning of this next chapter you're in. This is, and I didn't even know the guy died. But I had made arrangements, and we'll leave that story and you can interpret it any way you want. Somebody come and got me. And they brought me the paper. It was the next day. I had hit out the whole night, fucking tired, hungry, But like I used to say to my mother when I used to call from the hole, she used to say, why are you in the hole again? I said, Ma, I'd rather call you from the shoe than from the hospital. I'm all right. And she was like, all right.
That's where you're the safest in prison, in the shoe.
Well, in the fight, I didn't go to the hospital. I ended up in the shoe for somebody else going to the hospital. That's what I meant
but you're
to my
safe
mother.
there. Yeah, you're
very
safe.
safe.
Yeah.
But anyway, I remember reading the paper, and I realized at that moment that the guy had died, that I had hit. And there was this whole big article about, you read the newspaper articles, and that was the article, and I was like, oh, man.
But they didn't know it was you off the bat, or they knew, or they had you dead to rights?
So, no, they didn't have me dead to rights. So there were, the way the government claimed it, there was evidentiary issues in the case. Because it was my car, right?
Why would you use your own car, Johnny?
Well, so the thing is, right, it's a great question. It's like, that's why they say stupid criminals, the guy running through the woods with the LA gears that light up, right? The sneakers.
You were doing that too?
Why are you doing it? No.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't that stupid. But, okay, so I had my car, but I was just going surveillance, and then an opportunity presented itself that I don't know, I couldn't pass it up. There was no such thing as consequences until that day came when I was sitting in that yard saying, okay, these are the consequences. But what happened was, and when I did the podcast with Mike Lee, right, Bean Shooter, and there was that great little short that he used, the clip talking about my father saying, oh, handsome, because that's what had happened. They were asking him, this is kind of giving it a little substance. They were asking my father in a grand jury, hey, this is John's car that the ignition wasn't popped, the keys were in it. So how are we to, think that it wasn't anybody other than John that used it? So, and my father was like, a lot of people had access to that car. It was in my driveway with the keys in it. Many people would come over. Would it be people that you didn't know? Oh, a lot of people use the car. My father was very vague. And then when they asked him what I looked like, he said at the end of the inquiry that they were giving him, you have a beard, this, and I said it on Mike Lee show. And my father said, what do you look like that day? Handsome kid. And that's, they said no more questions, But that was the kind of event that precipitated that questioning. Like, my car was my car with my keys in it, my red Cadillac.
Did they arrest you right away next morning? So they had the grand jury before even going to arrest you?
Yes.
Oh, so they didn't technically have hard enough evidence to book you.
I'm sure they did. Ian, you know what happens, right? The feds never come knocking on your door saying, let's go, you committed the crime last night, right? They're saying, hey, wait a minute, we got this guy. Oh, hold on. That we were in the middle of a drug investigation. And I said, here, let me get this silver platter. Here, why don't you take this?
Did you know you were under investigation?
I mean, we had an idea we were, of course. But were we under investigation? That's me telling myself, they don't know.
Yeah, but no one said to you, hey, keep it cool, we're under investigation. Like, people know. When the feds are investigating, the mob knew that, everyone,
Right. So I didn't know per se. I had a feeling we were. I mean, I would see cars, I would see feds at my game. So I knew they were looking at us, but I felt like, I was in the club. They're just, that's what they do when guys are in the club. And we're looking too deep into this.
Do you ever wish that you took a back seat and took it easy that night looking back on it, or no, because you did it based on you had to do that for your character and what you believed in your principles?
So how do we get here today, though, Ian? You know what I'm saying? How do I get to be the person that I am today? Don't I have to go through everything that I went through? I think that for me, no. Whatever I went through, I went through. I just did what I did. Do I feel like, I should have never did that? I don't know, because then my life would have took a different turn. And who would I be today?
Of course, but I think beyond that, you help the person that might be in those shoes.
I think I can do that today.
Yeah, by giving that opinion, though, you prevent them. If you were sitting in a jail cell 10 years later and had that thought, that other person could have that thought that's listening to it right now, that's going through that.
No, it's interesting, and I know the value of that now. I know the value of that. Before, if anybody came to speak, like in a prison, or if anybody came to speak, let's fucking hell, I was one of these guys. Oh, if I can help just one kid, no, asshole. See you later, right? But I'm saying I just think that's because, youth blinded me to a lot of things. You know what I mean? I wake up every morning in pain, right? I used to see guys walking that limp and be like, oh, that guy's fucking faking for a check. We don't understand until we're in the middle of it. For me, anyway. And I can't give you advice. My best advice got me in prison for 35 years, right? I just hope that maybe I could tell you or somebody that's listening about my story, and maybe they can find value in it.
When did the feds eventually pick you up? How long after?
So the murder was 95. We got our case in September of 96, so at least 9 months.
They waited on
10
it that
months.
long. So they
Yep.
didn't take a body for, I mean, they didn't have someone in mind in the papers, nothing. They were just saying it's unsolved.
Yeah, they wanted me for questioning. I knew, at that point, after the fact, they wanted me for questioning. I knew it was only a matter of time. And, people would give me the advice, go to Brazil, do this, do that. And I'm like, whatever, man, I'll just handle it.
You didn't want to?
Just handle it, whatever. Just figure it out. Do the same. You know how we get through today? The same way I got through yesterday.
You figure it out. Yeah.
That's what we do, right?
And you made your own bed and you wanted to,
Listen, this is it. Whatever the case may be is.
So do you self-surrender or do they raid you?
No. Yeah, they fucking broke the door down.
Yeah, give us that day. Yeah.
Oof. That was a tough day. It was September 5th, 1996. And, SWAT teams, helicopters, snipers on roofs. Now, that's your tax dollars at work. If anything, I have a 380 in my house, and I didn't, of course. Thank God I didn't have a gun in my house. It would have been more time, right? But, it was a serious, serious day. And I remember getting arrested, them busting the door down. That's the first thing I heard. I was with my girlfriend at the time. And out of chaos, anarchy. They just came in. Before I even woke up, there was agents on me, handcuffing me. I was naked in my bed, right, with my girl. And they threw I think they purposely put the worst mismatched clothes. I'm like a fanatic when it comes to matching, right? So they put the worst mismatched clothes. I think it was a jean shirt with striped cut sweatpants that I used to wear in the gym. And I was like, what? And I figured, and I told the guys, I was in the back of a state trooper vehicle that they were transporting us to the police station. And I said, this ain't nothing. I'll be out by noon. And 27 years later, I got out.
Did you know what was happening, what you were being arrested for?
No, because you know what? You're involved in this lifestyle, right? Where it's if me and you were 20-year-old kids and we killed your girlfriend's lover, right? And we buried her and they came to knock down our door. We would know this is probably what this is about. But I was engaged in so many, unseemly activities, right? As you could say, drug dealing. I was doing everything, driving hookers around. You name it, I was making money from it. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Gambling, lending money, everything that's legal today.
What did they actually end up charging you with when you read the indictment?
So really, I was charged with possession with intent to distribute methamphetamine and cocaine. That was my indictment, and that's all my indictment turned out to be, because they were threatening us, right, with murder in the aid of racketeering and becoming a death penalty case. And, they gave me a memorandum. I could show you paperwork that, said if you just plead out to this, nobody else is going to get in trouble. We're not going to bring anybody back to a grand jury. And if they don't testify, we're going to stop their time and start running grand jury time. So, guys from the club said, listen, we'll get you a lawyer if you want. Do you want to fight this? And I was like, it wasn't worth it.
So they were technically letting you take the fall for the body, but they wanted you to take the plea deal, so they didn't wrap anyone into it. They were going to leave it as is with no one else involved.
Right. So they said, and I'll give you word for word. I remembered it said that pleading guilty will have an extremely beneficial effect on all your friends. And then they named them.
Now, couldn't they have played hardball and say, we're not giving you a deal like this unless you testify against someone?
I'm saying of course, that's their first thing. They always, I remember when the first day when I got arrested, they said, John, Sherry's not going to be this was my girlfriend at the time. Sherry's not going to be all right. She's at the house right now and she's really upset. She wants to know when you're coming home. And you could help yourself.
And did they even give you any type of offer, or they knew?
Never gave me an offer on paper. Never to cooperate. No.
But
no.
Do you think they knew better?
So, chauvinistically, I'd like to say yes, right? But there are some people that, big time people that cooperated. So, I don't know. I really don't. I can't answer that question. I'd like to think it's because they know that I would never tell. You know what I'm saying? And, judging by that first interaction with them, when I wouldn't even pay attention to them. I was just like, hey, can we get, are we going somewhere now? Are we going to get locked up somewhere?
Why do you think it never became a RICO case?
It never became a RICO case precisely because I pled out.
Oh, so they
said, if you don't plead out, we're going to charge you with murder in the aid of racketeering. And they named individuals who they were going to indict and what statutes they would indict them under.
Ah, so they went to you hoping they'd either flip you or plead out, and then
right.
That makes sense. I didn't realize it operated.
No, yeah, that's the way it turned out. That was the kind of the dynamic of the case. Yeah,
but it doesn't always work that way.
You know what, Ian? I can only speak to my own experience.
So, do you think that members of the club were worried at all about you testifying, or they knew that it was straight shoot?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a good question, right? But I can't get into the minds of anybody else, so
yeah.
I don't know.
Okay. So they give you that deal, or that for the 35 years. You sign it right away, or do you think about it?
Well, I take a few days to I already had guys in the club come and say, we'll get a lawyer. I'd be like, nah. So it's just I wanted to get it. The plea deal wrote up the best I could, you know what I'm saying? And there were some revisions that I did make to it because I remember at first I couldn't challenge it on a 2255. And I said, there's no way I'm signing this plea agreement if I can't challenge my sentence,
What's going through your mind at the time? Yeah.
I'm sorry. What's going through my mind at the time? So this all comes in stages, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm the guy that don't give a fuck about nothing, right? I'm shooting people in the middle of the street, I never shot nobody in the middle of the street, but, shooting off a gun in the middle of the street, getting into fights in the middle of the street, running people over in broad daylight, pulling people over in the... So now fast forward, that's the guy that, fuck everything. Well, now let's see what they do. Now, when they arrest you and you get into a cell and you're wearing an orange jumpsuit and the whole world stops, now it's like, what the fuck did I do? What conclusion did I think? I mean, did I have a different, interpretation? Didn't I realize this is how this was going to end?
Yeah.
So now you're in that position and you start thinking to yourself like, well, what I thought of first anyway was my mother, my father, the girlfriend at the time, my brother, my friends, my freedom. Somebody owes me $3,000. I mean, I'm thinking of all this stuff. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I got to go pick this money up. I got to, where's my bike? Where's my car? Just things that in the moment, the materialistic things and the things that mean most to you in life, they begin to disappear. And you're like, this is my new reality, right? And I remember day one, Ian. I remember it like it was yesterday. I looked out. I was in Wyatt Detention Facility, and I looked out, and I seen this dead bug on a windowsill. And I said, well, this is how this chapter starts, John. Is that me? Is that the dead bug right there? Is that me? Is that, is that what I've become? I'm dead. It's all the way over. And I thought, like, you're dead, kid. We use that terminology in my neighborhood. Oh, kid, you're dead. Like, betting a game, kid, you're dead. You know what I mean? So I thought that, that was kind of, that exemplified me sitting on that ledge, was that dead bug, right? And what I did say to myself, well, this is the newest chapter.
Yeah, I was in Wyatt too.
Oh, was you?
Yeah, we literally have lived each other's shoes in a different way.
Yeah.
So then,
and who would know it? This guy looks like McLovin. We just talked to Sean O'Brien on the phone, right?
Yeah.
The head of the Teamsters, who's a friend of mine that's a big fan of yours, right? And he said, "Hey, they call you McLovin." And I said, "Yo, this dude looks like McLovin."
Yeah, that's what they called me at Fort Dix.
That's great. That's great.
You had them re-edit the clause about the 2255, yep. And then you signed it after that.
Yeah.
And how long was that? Like a week, maybe?
Shortly thereafter.
So your proceedings went very quickly?
So I'm not sure if we could say they went, because I was in Wyatt and I got transferred out of Wyatt. I said it's retaliation, so I filed a lawsuit that, they retaliated against me. So now what I did is I get this complaint in the mail from them. What the hell is that?
Yeah, what is that noise?
Somebody outside?
I don't know. Is someone outside? Is your phone?
Probably Mike Lee. Let me see. Can we stop that for 1 second? Yeah, this is it.
What is that noise? Is someone throwing rocks at your window?
Probably Mike.
What? Does he know we're recording?
Are you outside?
Outside.
Yeah, I know. I'm in the middle of a fucking podcast, you animal. You want me to come down and fucking open the door for you?
Yeah. So you were just saying you got kicked out of Wyatt?
So, and the thing is what I said was it was a retaliation. So I filed a lawsuit saying it was a violation of my constitutional rights because, it's a retaliatory transfer. Why they transferring me? So they came back with this response to my complaint, and they had like about 30 disciplinary infractions that I had accumulated, since I was there. One of them was starting a group demonstration, flooding a whole unit, everything short of taking hostages. So, I mean, when I read it, and it was funny because I was writing my book in hindsight, when I was at Lewisburg, I was writing the 700 pages that I had accumulated, and it was so good because I went and printed it. And I was telling about all these things I did, and I'd be like, some of this stuff, there's no record of this. It's almost unbelievable. But then I got the lawsuit that they had, and the decision from Judge Hagopian in Rhode Island, and it was everything listed that I did, and I was like, oh well, shit. Here's so it wasn't a retaliatory transfer. They had Jennifer Egan was she was like the assistant warden there, and she had called the marshals 3 times. Will you please get this guy out of here? And they didn't respond until on the 4th time she called them. This guy just flooded out a whole unit. He started a group demonstration. And that's the day that they had transferred me to Plymouth. So they went my, stint as a jailhouse lawyer.
Now Wyatt, for people that don't know, is the federal holding detention center, kind of like a county jail, but for Fed cases for like Boston or Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut. You probably knew a ton of people in there at the time.
I know everybody. I'm saying, that was, half my neighborhood was there.
But there's not many politics in a place like that, or at least when I was there back then, maybe there was.
So it's almost ironic that you mentioned that, because at that particular time, there was South Bay prisoners, right, from South Bay jail, doing time it's because it's a contract facility. It's run by Cornell Corrections. I don't know if it still is or not, but it was Cornell Corrections. It was a privately run facility, and they had a contract with the state or the county to house county prisoners. So we were pretrial detainees at the time, right? Because we didn't get sentenced yet. So they were all in a block with us. And I remember one of those incidents that they, locked me up for, that they showed on this response to this lawsuit, was that we got into a huge beef with these kids because the black kids was like, no, that's our phone. And I was like, what do you mean it's your phone? There's nobody on it. Yeah, well, that's our phone. You can't use it. I went, I'll fucking smash you with this fucking phone. And we got into a huge beef with me and all my co-defendants and guys that I know against those guys. And then they separated us. So it was not much politics there, but the county guys were with the county guys, and the Fed guys were kind of with the Fed guys.
They kept your co-defendants in the same...
So we were dispersed around the jail when we first got arrested. Some went to Plymouth, some went to Wyatt in different units, but I had 2 in the unit with me.
And were there guys that actually got sentenced on your case, or they got released?
So there were guys that got sentenced on my case.
Did anyone testify against you?
Against me?
Yeah.
So I never went that far, right? So I took that plea deal that we had talked about to, get everybody out of trouble, and nobody else got into further trouble. Nobody had to go to grand juries. So that's the way they, that they had framed it for me. It's in your best interest and the interest of your friends.
Yeah.
I think that was the exact verbiage they used. So we never got, like Ian, to that level where people were on the stand. Okay. So that was just, everybody pled out.
Yeah, I didn't know if anyone was threatening to testify or anything like that.
So, guys got bail. We knew they were going to testify. We knew they had cooperating informants that were on our case, because I just did the meat test. I'm not going to get bail. How'd this guy get bail? You know what I mean? So
it's pretty, because it's the same charges, so it's pretty
I had the most charges, right? I had because I had the violence on top, right? Even the lead guy in the indictment only got 20 years for a continuing criminal enterprise, but that's the most it carried. But he wasn't involved in acts of violence that were, telegraphed in the indictment.
How long were you in these facilities before you actually got sentenced?
Man, I think because I got transferred finally from Wyatt, right? They sent me to Plymouth County Correctional Facility. I had a tough time there because once I got there, they knew why I was coming there. You know what I'm saying? They had this book saying, oh yeah, you're a tough guy. You know what I mean? So it was, but I ended up, so I'd say about 2 years.
Oh, it's still, even with a plea deal, it's still.
Yes. Yeah, it was a long time.
Do you feel like that was intentional, or are they trying to look at other cases, or?
You know what? So, listen, the way I always say this is that, these people didn't put me in prison. These administrators, these prison guards, if anything, I was the antagonist, right? I started problems in their prisons. So I was the antagonist. I don't think anybody did anything personally toward me, like to retaliate for some sort of retaliation. I don't even know what it would be in retaliation for. I had a big case, right? I had a serious case. And at that time, we had a very high profile bunch of guys. And I don't think it was anything intentional that they did. I just think, sometimes the process of going to court and getting your case adjudicated and getting your time and getting sentenced, getting designated takes a long time.
What was the max the judge could have sentenced you on per your plea deal?
Well, it started out as a death penalty case, right? So life imprisonment.
No, per the plea deal, though.
Life imprisonment.
So it was.
I had a non-binding plea agreement with Judge Young because Judge Young didn't do binding plea agreements. You know what I mean? And, so yeah.
So how nervous were you going into that, knowing that it wasn't a done deal?
You know what the thing is? I don't know if nervous is like the right term to use. I was upset about my mother and my father and just my family, that they had to go through this. And, and I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, John, you knew this was like the logical conclusion, right? But, I just kind of felt I was contrite about that. And I wasn't nervous per se, because like I say all the time, I looked around the day room and there were suckers doing this. Like people that I perceived as suckers doing this. And, it's a funny term that I use, right? Like the suckers, this is how you get money, suckers on the street, right? But when you go to prison, you become the sucker. Everybody's like, oh, look at this fucking pair of sneakers. They're like $80. They're like $20 on the street. Because you're the sucker now. I'm the sucker.
Did the judge say why he chose 35 years?
Yeah, well, he sentenced me to 420 months. I gave a speech in court that was, pretty dramatic, right? And it was just ad-libbed. I didn't think of it, you know what I'm saying? I just ad-libbed it. And, I had said to the judge about, if me and you were in a foxhole, Your Honor, we would either leave together or die together. And if the enemy ever wanted the secrets that we had as Americans, I would die to not give them up. I said, but you sit in front of a flag, the American flag sits behind you, and you want people to cooperate and to tell, about other people. It's just, I couldn't, when I put those two things together, I really couldn't come to terms or square that reasoning. And he had said that you've done nothing but sully the names of the people that serve this country, and you've done nothing but serve your own needs. So in that speech that I made, I'm convinced kept me in jail for the whole duration of my sentence, because I had actually won, right? Remember when I put that clause in to have a 2255? I actually won. Judge Zobel said that, listen, you are no longer a career offender. The two predicate acts that you have as a career offender, you're no longer a career offender. However, it doesn't affect the length of your sentence. And she could have did something for me, but I believe she didn't because of that speech I made. And, Young was her friend. Of course, they're all, like me and you are friends. If somebody disrespects you, I'm with you. You understand? And that's just the way it works in all circles.
We're just not going to allow you to go back to prison.
No, I'm not going back.
So he gives you 35 years. Mm-hmm. When you hear that, they say it in months.
420 months.
Are you trying to add that up in your head?
Yeah, I thought I did better than 35 years. I said, wow, after I said this guy's going to give me a better deal?
400 months sounds better than 35 years.
So, yeah, it's but I had to come to terms with it, right? So, and I always say this to people, and people used to say, man, how do you do this? It's right? That you had a prison sentence. You had to wrap your head. At first you were like, how much time did you get?
36 months.
Okay, there's no way I can do 36 months. I got this business going. I got this going. My daughter, but I don't know what your situation is, but I can't do this. But then slowly, right, you acclimate yourself to it and you wrap your head around it. Me, it was a little harder to wrap around because, it's like I tell everybody, when you got 5 years in on a 35, you still got 30. When you got 15 in on a 35, you still got 20. It's when you got 30 years in, you still got to do 5 more years. It's almost untenable to the human mind, right? But for some reason, you know, I'm frugal, right? My friends say I'm cheap, right? But I'm frugal. So the couple of years I had invested in working out and eating good, I never wanted to lose that. So I just kept going a day at a time.
Now, when you get a sentence like that, I know when I got sentenced, the first time I met with like the counselor, I'm mapping out, all right, good time. This is my release date. But on a 35-year sentence, is that even a thought in your mind, or it doesn't matter?
I didn't even think about it. it was time to go do time. You know, I went to Leavenworth Penitentiary, went to the case manager, said I need a copy of my PSI, right? Because you could just walk in and get it at that point in time. Now they're illegal to possess in prison. But, you know, my homeboys, they all knew. Everybody from Boston read the Herald, read, you know, the USA Today, Discovery Channel specials. You know, they seen about my case. They knew who I was. You know, I mean, not saying that I'm anybody special, but in other words, to be vetted. Like, is this guy any good? Is he, you know, who are you? Like, your case probably wasn't that big. Like, who are you? You got your paperwork?
No, I got treated like shit.
Yeah, well, so, well, you look like McLovin. I'm saying.
I look like a chomo. That's why they treated me like shit. And you know how they operate at Fort Dix and whatnot. The New England car at Fort Dix didn't even approach me until I was already in hot water for doing absolutely nothing. Right. And there was trouble because they didn't even offer me any help to check my paperwork. Right. They just automatically labeled me 100%. As no good. That's 100%. Fucked up.
It is fucked up. But, you know, these are the policies of prison, right? Yeah. So it's a whole nother area of, operation for us, right? This is a whole nother thing that in society, none of that stuff flies. But in prison, it's just the way it is.
I would say that's the number one thing I wish I knew. And if God forbid I ever had to go back, I know how to handle myself. But I wish I knew. I wish someone said, hey, get your paperwork, because I went to trial. You know, my paperwork's very good out there. Someone
pristine
testified on
if you
me.
Went to trial.
Yeah. So, well, there's cases where you can take a deal after trial. Right. You know,
sure.
But it was 90%, clean, and then sentencing minutes would have showed. But anyways, I just wish I knew that. I wish someone told me.
Right.
And
that's why they got prison consultants now.
Those guys are a scam.
Listen. You know what? I knew they were scams.
I paid $3,000 for one.
Listen, a guy I know in Lewisburg camp told me, Johnny, I paid $25,000 to just somebody to tell me that I wouldn't get raped in a camp.
Yeah.
I was like, all you had to do was give me a fucking full commissary order. I would have did that.
You go to prison, you know who you pay? The rabbis. They got the pull. You pay the rabbis. Yep.
Huge. That's why everybody, changes their religion to Jewish.
Yeah. So you get to Leavenworth. Who approaches you when you get on the yard there? Who are you like running with? Is there still cars at Leavenworth?
No, well, just Boston. The Boston guys. Okay. And the guy that just seen me coming, who was a dear friend of mine, became a dear friend of mine. He was a skinhead. He was a member of the Aryan Resistance Militia there, and just a great guy that I got along with very well. And people don't understand about how prison. And the rules of prison differ from society. So when I say those things, people might, even take a step back and be like, wow, what? But that's just the way prison was, especially when I was there. But he brought me to the Boston guys.
And were there any notorious people during that time? Because Leavenworth is a pretty famous prison.
Sure, there was a lot of notorious people there. From my area, the Charlestown guys, Pat McGonigal was there, Pat Magoo. And he was a notable Charlestown figure. Georgie Whalen, who's dead right now. Ricky Ark, Stevie Coleman, Pepe Galvin. There was a bunch of people there that, from Charlestown. There was notorious criminals, gangsters, like Steve Kessler was there. John Stanfa was there. Henry Borelli was there. Joe Massaro was there. What's that? Leonard Peltier, that everybody knows his name. It rings. They're trying to get clemency forever. Yuri Call was there. I'm saying, the who's who.
Were there any of the notorious like Boston bank robbers there during that time?
Sure, those guys from Charlestown I mentioned. Those are all armored car guys. Okay. But none of the ones that you would know, because you're talking about like Hudson and stuff like that. So those guys weren't even in jail yet. That wasn't even a thing yet.
Okay. And you guys all associated together?
We played hockey together.
But in prison, you're like the Boston.
We played hockey together at Leavenworth. We had a hockey league.
What do you mean hockey?
It was Boston against everybody else.
But like what kind of hockey?
Street hockey. We had Milik sticks, Milik balls.
How do you have sticks?
Well, they let us have them.
Did you guys have weight pits back then?
So we had a weightless pit because after the riot, there was a huge riot, the crack riots, before my time in prison, where they took all that stuff. So we had a bunch of dip bars, bunch of pull-up bars, And yeah, that was our work.
I-
The
I-
weightless pit, that's what I call it.
I interviewed a guy last week that was a bank robber back in the day, and he was at Leavenworth and all that before when the weights were there
Right.
and all of that.
Right, so that's before 80 something. I wasn't there.
Yeah, it was in the 80s
Yeah.
when that happened. So you go to Leavenworth, and you're running with the Boston guys.
Boston guys. I'm with the Boston guys.
How long were you at Leavenworth for?
I was there for like 5 years.
Oh, so you had a good stretch there.
Yeah, long stretch. And it was a great, listen, it was a violent place, but it was a great place.
Were you keeping your nose down, or were you getting into trouble right off the bat?
So, I mean, the thing was, I wasn't trying to look for trouble, but I wasn't shying away from it. You know,
have to
we had
defend
issues. The Boston car had issues. Our friends had issues. We had issues over tables where, we had with a serious crew that had just come to the line. We had issues with the tables, and that was like the biggest thing that happened when I was there. And I'll never forget what happened. But this guy, Steve Kessler, who was a dear friend of mine, Gary Gilmore was the last guy to get shot by a firing squad. I don't know if you know who he is, but he talked about Steve Kessler in his book. So Steve Kessler was a heroic figure to me. Just a great guy, a mentor to me in prison, but probably one of the most dangerous guys in the federal system at the time. He killed a guard escaping from Rocky Butte Jail in Oregon, and they sent him to the feds because he was the most dangerous man in Oregon, they said. Anyway, there was this crew that came in and was trying to commandeer some tables in the white section. The white people sat there. We sat with the Islanders, with the Mexicans, we were all together. There was a black section and then everybody else. And they come over and try to take these two front tables. I remember I was sitting there at breakfast, and this Chinese guy that never said nothing to nobody, he was really mad. There was guys sitting down, and I'm like, yo, what? The whole dynamic changed. And I was like, wow, what the hell the fuck are they doing? So I was getting mad, right? And my friend Paulie was like, just relax, hold on. I'm like, yeah, but you're sitting at our table. John, relax. This is an older fella, older than me. And so at lunch, I was like, Kessler, what the hell? These fucking guys are sitting at a table. They can't. He's like, John, can I just enjoy my lunch, please? These guys were seasoned. I'm like, I just want to go grab something and hit somebody with something. Like, they can't do this. They're making a mockery of us. They're making us look bad. Everybody in the chow hall is looking at them sitting on our tables. So he was like, why don't you just let me eat lunch? So he ate his lunch, and then we kind of devised a plan. And that night, everybody brought like plastic knives. He, called everybody together, made a plan, and we were down there going through like 5 or 6 metal detectors to get to the chow hall. And unbeknownst to me, because he didn't tell me to get a knife, he didn't tell me to do anything, you know what I'm saying? I'm like a younger kid, right? And I'm like, Kess, and he was like, just relax for a second. I was like, all right. He goes, come with me. We walk over to the table that they're sitting at. And there's a guy just standing up like God, so such dramatics in prison, right? And my friend Kessler said, there was 2 seats open. He goes, hey, you mind if we sit down? The guy's like, trying to be a hard guy, He's like, yeah, man, what's up? The guy's like, oh, nothing. Kessler was like, no, nothing's up. He said, hey, listen. And I'm sitting down. I'm like, this fucking guy got me over here, and this shit's ready to jump off right here. So I'm just sitting with him, and I was always with him. So I would go anywhere with him. And I almost kind of the same. It was like, you had to juxtapose those 2 positions, right? It was like I was scared as shit, but I was like honored to be there. And he was like, yeah, listen, my man. He goes, hey, listen, I understand. I've been in prison a while. He said, if my friends were coming on the line, I would do the same exact thing as you. So I get it, 100%. He says, but I just want to let you know, there's people in this chow hall tonight that are willing to die for this table. So you guys have a good dinner, and I'll talk to you later. It was the most impactful, incident without violence I've ever witnessed in my whole life. And that was it.
They got off the
Oh,
table.
no, that was it. Nobody ever sat there again. Wow. They got another table. Guys were talking to them. They went somewhere. They kind of, went somewhere else. I don't even know where they went. I wouldn't even remember where they went. But they never sat there.
Why are tables, because I realized this at Fort Dix, why are tables and placements so important in prison?
So the thing is I think when, us as inmates, right? And we're inmates that, like yourself, that wasn't like a pedophile, that, got wrongly accused of this because you look like McLovin. I love you to death, kid, but you look like McLovin, right? So, but I'm saying, but now you fight for your honor. I'm not a fucking pedophile. I'm not a chump. You know what I'm saying? So, but it means something to us, right? And as the more serious you are as an inmate and the more serious you are as a convict, like it's a direct affront to you and your people, right? So I remember in Lee County when this black dude sat at our section. I had come from Leavenworth, went to Petersburg, got a disciplinary from Petersburg, and went to Lee County Penitentiary. And I went over to the guy, and listen, I had a little more tact with me at that time because I had a little more experience, you know? And, you know, I know that, hey, you know what? Somebody, you want to tell somebody where to sit? Get ready to get stabbed because I don't want to be told where to sit, right? Do you like it when somebody makes you uncomfortable and says, hey, listen, my man, you can't sit there? I don't want to be that guy because I know that there's going to be opposition. So I went to the guy and I said, hey, my man, I don't know if you just got here or not. Listen, enjoy your breakfast. Sit here. Do your thing. And, you know, but the Italian guy sitting in the back here, this our section. And he just looked at me and went, government don't own these tables. And I was like, oh, listen. Now it was like, you know, now he just put his foot in my nuts. And I was like, listen, my man, check this out. Don't sit here at lunch, all right? Because these tables are taken. So I went back and, you know, miserable. I'm like, fuck it. Why couldn't it just work out with like, hey, because when I walk into a chow hall in prison, I don't care if I don't know nobody and I know everybody wherever I went. I could see where I sat. It's easy, you know, and 99.9% of the people in prison realize that. So I go there, go back to my unit, tell a couple people, listen, there might be a problem here in the chow hall, man. I just give this guy an ultimatum, and he's one of these crazy guys. Come to find out later, he was really medication nuts. So I go back in there, I go early, I sneak out of my unit because I want to make sure this guy don't sit at this fucking section. I already told him he couldn't sit there, right? So I go in there, he's like right in front of me somewhere. So I just watch his play. And he takes his tray and he goes like he's going to a whole nother section. I'm like, thank fucking God, you know? And he bangs a U-turn and goes, sits right at the table he was sitting at. So I go to his friend in the line. I go around the whole line. He's serving the eggs. I'm like, yo. And I knew him from North Carolina. The guy was from North Carolina. I was like, yo, your man. And the cop was like, yo, get out of here. Get out. Beat it. This guy's working. So everybody's looking at me like I told. So I just ran as fast as I could and stoved on him. And that started World War III. Everybody got up. The cops came in. They had guns. That was like probably, and to this day, what I'm told, of course, I don't see no training videos, of course. But to this day, I'm told that that's a training video at Lee County Penitentiary.
So would you dive for him? And
well,
just
I just
grab him?
ran. I got a running start and knocked him out. And I punched him as hard as I could.
And now is your crew running with you and
Well,
hopping
of course,
in?
everybody's standing up. You know what I'm saying? Everybody.
Now, I've talked to guys and witnessed firsthand at lower security prisons about the knocking on the table. What's that like in the penitentiary?
I mean, I always thought it was just dramatics. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got to knock the table before you leave. It's whatever. I did it. Like, sometimes I wouldn't. I mean, I don't know. It's like, you know, to me, right? It's another thing is these kind of boxes we fit ourselves into in certain situations. Like when you talk to the cops, you got to bring somebody with you. It's so dramatic because I remember going over and talking to like a lieutenant who was the SIS lieutenant. This guy from this gang says, come over, I want to talk to the lieutenant. And I'm like, all right, I'll come over with you. And he starts telling the lieutenant, yeah, this guy can't get out, but this guy can. This guy can't get out, but this guy can. And afterwards, I'm like, yo, bro, do me a favor. Don't never take me to talk to the lieutenant with you again. So in other words, he's talking to the lieutenant, like telling, saying like he can get out, but he can't. Like, I hope that I'm not at somebody's mercy that you just dictated that I couldn't get out of the hole, right? I would just go, listen, so when I went and talked to the warden, somebody had said, hey, listen, you really should take somebody with you to talk to somebody. I said, my man, check this out. I'm going to talk to the warden about my wife's visits. Whenever I go talk to the cops, I talk to the cops any way I want to talk to the cops. You know what I mean? I'm not giving, somehow I'm giving information. I took a 35-year sentence, but somehow like I'm giving information to the police about prison stuff. No, you know what I'm saying? So I always thought that was kind of dramatics. And, you know, we had talked. It's not like I'm the toughest guy in the world and I dictate what goes on. You know, people had some issues about that. And I would tell them, hey, listen, my man, check it out. You know, I'm going to talk to them. Hey, want to read my wife's letter? How she got kicked out? This is what I'm going to talk to. You know, so, but I just think it's a lot of prison dramatics.
But there are cases where guys, you know, go to trial, don't snitch, and then become jailhouse rats. I'm sure that's why they have those in place,
okay,
right?
So check this out, right, Ian? Nobody on planet Earth who's anybody, is going to talk to the warden in the middle of a fucking chow hall and telling him, yeah, this guy's got wine, this guy's got a knife, this guy's, right?
Yeah.
That stuff happens behind closed doors. That's when they got a number, they call, they'll go to arts and crafts and somehow find their way into the back door. This don't happen in the middle of a chow hall. This is prison dramatics, Ian.
So why?
Ian, this is prison dramatics.
Why do they do that then? Why?
It's a show. It's like guys going to the shower with their boots on.
Yeah, what? Tell us about that.
And the boots are unlaced.
Did you go to the shower with the boots on?
I live a clean life in jail, brother.
So you didn't do
Never.
that? Really?
I go in my shower
Even at
shoes.
the penitentiary?
Even at the penitentiary. I live a clean life.
What about the chair?
I just draped my towel. Listen, I didn't have 900 things. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I left my broad at home. I went and just took a shower.
So what do you think about these guys that tell these war stories about how they had a guy outside
They
guarding them
did.
with a shank? And
They're not war stories, but it's prison dramatics. And some people, I don't know, maybe they're tipped up with a... So these are things according to me, right, Ian? So this is my life.
Oh, and it's interesting.
I can't talk to you about gang members that were in jail that, did that stuff. All the more power to them. I got guys that I love to this day that they acted in that manner, and that's fine for them, but I never did.
All right, so let me ask you something. These guys you were running with, did they follow your lead too? Like, were they going to the shower with boots on and stuff, or no? Or was it solo? Like what you're saying?
So, but it's funny the way you frame that question, right? Were they following me? So I'm not one of these shot callers in prison. I was the shot caller. I ran the prison. It wasn't like that for me.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I did anybody look up to me and, take my example as I, performed the acts that I did or didn't? I don't know. You have to talk to them about them. I can just talk to you about other people, and I can talk to you about my own subjective experiences. Mm-hmm. I don't know if people followed me.
No, I don't mean like follow. I meant like, did anyone else do that? Was it normal to do that? Or
yeah,
were
so
you
like the guys I hung out with, some did and some didn't. None of them ever said, like, Ian, look, when there was a stabbing the day before in Leavenworth, when the two gangs got down, I'm watching my friends back because there's tension in the unit. We don't know what's going to happen. But on Tuesday morning at 8 o'clock, no.
Yeah. So why did you get kicked out of Leavenworth?
Why did I get kicked out of
Yeah.
Leavenworth? Oh, I dropped down in security level. What happened was initially they said, oh, we're closing Leavenworth. We're making it a medium. It's not going to be a high security institution anymore. And they said everybody's getting transferred to Lee County. And I was like, I don't want to go to fucking Lee County and then fucking DC, a brand new joint opening up, fighting for TVs, fighting for tables. I'm like, what the? So I went to my counselor because I knew they had made a mistake in my classification. I only had so many points. They had me as a prior prison stay, which jacked my points up very high, but it wasn't a prior prison stay. It was my pre-trial stay. So she did all the calculations. I was really a medium, which I knew I was. I could have went any time. But I liked Leavenworth. I liked hanging with Kessler. I liked all my homeboys from Charlestown. I liked playing hockey. You know what I'm saying? So at that time when I said, oh, this is the time I'm gonna flash that card right now. So, and I went to Petersburg, and I ended up getting into a wreck in Petersburg and going to Lee County anyway. So
you got what you wanted.
Well, I didn't get what I wanted. I got the medium, but I was only in the medium for like 6 months. It was.
How hard was it to adjust to a medium after starting in a penitentiary?
I wasn't ready for it. And it was a brand new medium, and there was fights over TVs. We were getting into wrecks, and somebody ended up stealing something from me, and I fucking bashed them in the chow hall again.
Are the rules just different? Like, why is it hard to adjust?
So I wouldn't say it was different insofar as the reason why I was, that I got out of there so quick. It was just a brand new institution. When we got to Leavenworth, of course, there was a natural order of things, right? And that's been going on forever, right? How long was Leavenworth there? Way before I committed crime, probably way before I was a gleam in my father's eye, right? So there was a natural order of things, and this wasn't like that at all, because it's a brand new penitentiary with some of the most dangerous people, because it's a pen. They're coming from every institution in the country that they're just transferring them there, right? And now you got to say, this is my table. That's my TV. We need a white TV in the block. We need a Spanish TV in the block. We need a black TV in the block. Because left to the free play of forces, right, the numbers are going to take everything, right? Then you get to a joint, and your friends come in, like, hey, Johnny, what's up? Where's our TV? Let's see, I'll ask this guy if we can. You know what I mean? I don't want to be that guy. I never want to be that guy. When I got to McKean, there was that. And we kind of changed the landscape a little bit when I got there.
Being a part of like these cars in prison, did it make you feel like you were on the outside again, like internally, like being with around people?
No, because, I always say we laugh to keep from crying. It was a facade we put on until we can get back to our families.
What about other motorcycle club members? Did you encounter any in prison?
Yeah, so, one of my best friends in Leavenworth was an outlaw. Two of my best friends.
Okay.
And they, we had a situation with another, a racialist gang. They were white guys that, had a personal problem with my friend RV that was an outlaw. And, we handled it, and he loved the situation. He, in jail we know how divisive. How do you pronounce this word?
Divisive.
Okay, let's say divisive then. So now it's a very divisive environment, right? Especially racially divisive, right? When you get into these high security institutions. So when you got people that have the same culture, same beliefs as you, right? You kind of embrace them, right? Maybe a different motorcycle club, but here's this guy. He's 7 feet tall, 6.5 feet tall, whatever. Big corn-fed dude from Wisconsin. And what a hearty laugh. I fell in love with the guy, you know what I'm saying? And he had the same beliefs and morals as me, and he was just like me. And, we created a lifelong lasting friendship.
So in a penitentiary, what takes precedent, the race or the car?
So the thing is, in the penitentiary, it's race, right? And then when you drop down to medium, so for example, I'll give you a perfect example. Leavenworth, we had one of my boys, Herb from Dorchester. When the shit happened, the yard split in half, you know what I'm saying? So, and Herb was on the other side than us. But obviously we love Herb. Herb loved us, but obviously we're just seeing what happens. Hopefully there's no violence. It's just, hopefully we can, resolve this diplomatically, and most times we did, right? But and then you could place that side by side with Fairton, New Jersey. It was a medium that when I got there, it was the black guys and the white guys. If anything happened, it's Boston against the world.
Yeah. Well, when you went to a place like New Jersey, you're probably in the minority, right? Like Boston guys.
There's always a big Boston car.
New
even
Jersey,
in Leavenworth.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Fort Dix, New Jersey had a lot. Yeah. So you go to Fort Lee, County Lee.
It's a Lee County Penitentiary, right? Okay. That's new, yeah. So tip of Tennessee, Kentucky, and Virginia.
Where'd you go after that?
So from Lee County is where I went to Fairton. Because I had just got married.
Okay.
I got married and divorced to the same woman twice in prison.
How did you meet her in prison?
She sent me a letter.
Were you like a notorious guy that just randomly sent you a letter?
So the funny thing with her is she was married to a guy named John, and she was going out with a guy named Bart who happened to be in another motorcycle club, and she seen my name, and just the rest is history. I fell stupid in love with her.
And what happened to that?
So we got married, we got divorced, we got married again, we got divorced again, and today we're friends. She was supposed to come down this weekend.
Oh, you got married twice to her?
Married twice.
To
and
her.
Divorced twice. This is a whole nother podcast.
Holy cow. But I think people are interested in the psychology of a woman writing a letter to someone they don't even know from the outside because of the serial killers and those convicted killers.
Sure. It's very interesting, right? And again, I wish I could, tell you what goes on in her mind and what she felt. She's a sane, rational person. I love her. She's a great person, generous person, one of the best people I met. Did so much for me, was there through me for 90% of my bid, and I love her today, you know what I'm saying? So, but I don't know if I can adequately tell you what went on in her mind and the actions that she took, right? I can only talk subjectively, my own experience.
Yeah, well, it's interesting to hear your perspective, though. Like, what was in your mindset when a woman reaches out to you?
She's the feds.
But you eventually caved in.
She's the feds.
You caved in, though.
She's the feds.
How
There's only one
trust?
explanation for Natalie coming to visit me. She's wearing a wire, and she was drop dead gorgeous. Had the True Religion jeans on, the high heels. She had a tie-dye shirt that looked like it cost $1,400. Just everything about her was amazing. The first words I ever spoke to her when I was on the visit was, "I forgot my socks." Because I got my socks. You had to get strip search in and out. And that was the only thing I could muster to say to her. She was amazing. And I was looking at her okay, where's the wire? I'm looking, because I thought she was the feds. Why else was she? I had 25 years left on my sentence.
How did she win you over then?
Just, we talked for 3 days and it went by in 15 minutes. And then she came back again and, it just, they say the rest is history. Oh my God. This was, I always say when I wrote the book, and I did, right, that there's going to be a chapter, Along Came Natalie.
So how do you end up at Fort Dix?
So what happened was I was in Fairton, right? And everybody calls it Farrington.
That's what I used to call it.
It's not Farrington.
It's
Go look at it. It is FCI Fairton.
And they have a camp there too, I think.
They had a camp there.
Okay.
There's a medium and a camp. So I was there, and remember I was working out in the yard, and they said, Bartolomeo, come to the unit. So I went to the unit, and there's like all my friends in the vestibule of my unit waiting for me. And I'm like, this don't look good at all. Like, this looks like somebody's going to console me. Like, I thought it was maybe somebody died. I was like, oh, what the fuck? And I went there and like, yo, they're transferring you, man. The guys from R&D came. Man, it's, and I'm like, transferring me where? So what had happened at that point in time, too, and these events kind of transpired at the same time, right, is that they had the SMU program, Special Management Program in Lewisburg. And I remember these cops talking to me saying, man, it's surprising you're not there. Like, because what they're doing now is if you had 3 drinking shots, they're just putting people in there. They need people in there. So when they said I could go to Fort Dix, I was like resistant. I was like, no, I don't want to go. I'm going to continue my school. You know what I mean? And I had already, been involved in like, these courses over there in Fairton where they had these professors coming in. So, but then I thought about it long and hard. I put a lot of thought into it. And I said, you know what? Maybe I should just go get to the lower security, because they had me shook, like going to fucking SMU program. Because you're going to get into a wreck in the SMU. You're just going to get more time. That's all that was happening, So I went to Fort Dix. They just, my points had dropped and they were ready for me to leave.
Now, Fort Dix is night and day from Leavenworth.
Night and day, on many levels. I'd rather Leavenworth, to tell you the truth.
And is that because there's too much freedom and not enough structure?
No, I wouldn't say that insofar as, freedom. I'm saying we love the freedom, right? There was phones everywhere. There was, I was doing crazy shit in the visiting room. It was great in that regard, right? But it was hard, very hard for me to get away from the 2-man cell. Very hard to live in the dorm environment for me.
Yeah, but they do have 2-man cells, but you have to work your way up in the
and listen, the counselor loved me. She goes, you're a real convict. Everybody says they're a convict, but she goes, I can't put you in a 2-man right now because somebody will put a charger in your boot and they'll get you in trouble, and then we'll have to figure that out. Just work with the orderly. And before I did all that, I was under investigation for heroin, cell phones, steroids, and gambling.
Now, something I realized is that the guys that came from the pen always had a hard time adjusting there. And then the guys that came from like a medium acted a little bit more crazy and reckless. And those guys wouldn't last long.
Yeah, so there's always that, oh man, fuck this, put me back in the pen. It's a lot of, it's like, again, for me, that was a lot of prison dramatics. I loved it. I appreciated it. And don't forget, Natalie was from New Jersey, Philadelphia, South Philly area. So it was real close for her to commute, So, and that was another thing. So I just really tried to stay out of trouble, but I really didn't do a good job because.
How long were you there for before that happened?
I don't know. It was like 3 months, 4 months.
Wait, you got racked up with all those charges?
And then I got, I was in the hole for over a year there too. Very close to a year, over a year.
At least it was air conditioned.
That was the one saving grace, right?
What side were you on when you were?
I was on. So I had our intake. What do they call intake now? I forgot.
R&O.
Yeah, no, they call it A&O.
A&O. Yeah.
So I had A&O on the west side. Imagine you forget that. Jesus Christ.
Yep. A&O on the west.
A&O on the west side. Then I went to the east side.
Which building were you in?
I was in 03 first. And then I got transferred to 41.
I was in 41.
Because listen, here's what happened. All my homeboys were in a room. There was a bunch of my homeboys there. Stevie Capichetti, Biggie, Danny Acasella, Jay Allen, who has since passed away. God rest his soul. He died of an overdose. Great kid from South Boston. But they were all over there. My friend Sal Savoca from New York was there. And I wanted to get in their room, which was directly below my room, right? So I'm like, I'll just wait for the counselor, right? That's what you get, a room change, whatever, right? I'm in a low security, but can't be too hard to do that. So I wait for this guy, and I waited for like 3 fucking hours. I'm like already aggravated as it is. So the guy comes in, and I'm like, I said, you're harder to get in touch with than the president. I said, how you doing? I'm Bartolomeo. He went, what do you want? I went, well, I want to get just a room change. I said, I'm on 311. I want to go to 211. My homeboys are in there to go bed early. I don't want to have to get into a wreck up there, with people staying up all night and stuff. He goes, yeah. He goes, handle your problems on your own. We don't do room moves. So I said, oh, you want me to handle my problems on my own? Is that what you're telling me? I said, you got Sentry access in this computer? And he looked at me like Sentry is what they look up inmates, right? And only a seasoned convict would know that, right? Not nobody that just walked in the door. So I said, you have Sentry access? And he looked at me and he goes, what are you talking about? No, I said, if you have, can I mind if I sit down? I said. So he's just looking at me. So I sat down. I said, well, if you got Sentry access, right? I said, it's interesting, right? Find out how I handle my problems, because the last time I handled my own problems, the whole jail got locked down and they gave us bag lunches for a week at Lee County Penitentiary. So see how that one works out. And he went into the thing. He's looking at me, and he said, go to the lieutenant's office. So what do you mean go to the lieutenant's office? Go to the lieutenant's office. So what the fuck am I going to the lieutenant's office for? I didn't do anything. He goes, you're threatening me. You're threatening your whole room. I said, what? I want a room move. You told me to handle my problems myself. So I ended up going to the lieutenant. There's a counselor, and they said, listen, Bartolomeo, just go up to the lieutenant's office. I go up to the lieutenant's office. In other words, I'm in the hole. They write me for threatening him, threatening my whole room, right? So I appeal the ticket, right? So I ended up beating the ticket, right? So it's like, there was a problem with the evidence. That's what they said. Because I said, I didn't, my appeal said, all I did, I said, if I say I'm going to burn your house down, that's a threat, right? I made an allusion to fact. These are past events that happened, and I was trying to use those past events so you could correspond what my behavior might be if you want me to handle my own problems. So the DHO at the region threw it out, and, but when I went to him, the counselor, and I was like, hey, no hard feelings. And he goes, yeah, I wish they didn't write you up for threatening. You know what I'm saying? He's backpedaling now. And I said, no problem. He goes, but I think it's best if you leave this unit so we don't interact with each other. I said, boss, I ain't got a problem with you. Listen, I've been in these places for a long time. Short memory. Yesterday's yesterday. No big deal. And he was like, no, I just think it's better. He said, I just wish they wouldn't have wrote you up threatening. I said, well, can I say that you said that to me? He goes, yeah, you can use that. And that's kind of how another facet of my appeal. You said it, I wouldn't threaten him.
And then they sent you to 41.
So I went to 41, yeah.
Was Rivera there, the counselor?
Listen, the best.
Rivera?
She loved me because she was like, you're a real convict. She helped me get my wife's visits back and everything because my wife had said something derogatory on the phone, and there was a new captain there. She had an Irish name. What's her name? Whatever her name was, and I'll think of it. But my wife said something on the phone, and she tried to take my wife's visits unilaterally. And Rivera was like, it takes a conspiracy to do that. You got to have sanctions for that. So she went to this meeting. I ended up getting my visits back with my wife. So she loved me.
She's hit or miss.
You know what? Because she said, you're a real convict. She was the one that said, just help my orderly buff the floors, and you're going to get a single room. Don't worry about a double room. Listen, she gave me the greatest compliment. I'm in the hole, right, on this investigation. And I said, hey, Rivera, what's up? She was like, hey, Bartolomeo, what's up? What are you doing? And I was like, hey, what the hell's going on? She goes, Bartolomeo, listen, they're playing checkers with a chess master. Don't worry about nothing. You're all set. You know what I'm saying? She goes, the investigation is going to be over soon. But I thought that was a great compliment she gave me.
What year were you at Fort Dix?
Oh, man, you're going to make me try to do this math again. So 2000. I got married in 2007. 2008, 2009 to 11 maybe.
Okay, no, you weren't there when my bunkie got there. Was it weird to see going from a penitentiary where chomos aren't allowed to Fort Dix, that aspect of it for you?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's the undesirable population, right? And everybody got a story. It wasn't my Wi-Fi. I'm saying they want to just, So the thing is the funny thing is that the dynamic had started to change a little bit, right? So you're saying they weren't at the penitentiaries. Now they have penitentiaries dedicated to pedophiles, right? So when we were at McKean, right, the warden had told SIS to come to tell us that, hey, listen, McTaggart, Bartolomeo, if you ask anybody for paperwork anymore, whenever you ask a pedophile for paperwork, we're taking 4 of your guys. So if every one pedophile you have, so they started doing that stuff everywhere. Everybody's protected now. You can't even get your PSI. It's a whole different animal now.
Why don't they just put them in their own facility like we were just talking about?
Because it just makes too much sense. They can play Dungeons and Dragons. You ever see them? Like when one of them recognizes another one, they'll see him like they'll just come in, and it's like a love affair. Like their eyes light up and they recognize each other. And then the next night they're playing Dungeons and Dragons. It's amazing. They love it. Life is great over there.
I had one write
Eating fucking honey buns and Jesus
I had
Christ.
one write me a note at the Fort Dix Library. He slipped me a note saying to meet up with him after. I never went to the library again.
You handled it a little different than I would, but go ahead.
So no, it's weird. I got approached all the time for that.
God bless you.
So where do you go after you get kicked out of Fort Dix?
So from Fort Dix, I got a disciplinary to McKean. They gave me, I had no shot, no nothing. It was just under investigation, but they had something called a greater supervision transfer, where SIS would engineer the transfer, and I went to a security level higher, which from a low went to a medium. And that's where I met Kevin McTaggart. I had a great bit over there. One of the best guys I ever met.
And then you eventually worked your way down to a camp?
So from McKean, I went to Devens to have my hip done. From Devens, I got kicked out of Devens from being too close to female staff. And that's a movie in itself. But we'll save that for later.
So you got your hip replaced at Devens?
Well, I got it at Boston Medical Center.
Did they do
from
a good
Devens.
job?
Huh?
They do a good job?
They did a great job.
And who pays for that?
Huh?
Who pays for that?
Books of stamps and Max. I had to pay.
Wait, you had to pay for your
the
own?
doctor. I asked him how many books of stamps to get this fucking thing done. So the government pays for it, I guess. I don't know. I didn't pay for it.
That's fun. But it was probably so bad that they had to operate it.
Well, just to give you an idea, when I was in McKean, the director of the hospital seen me walking and went, "Hey, you, come over here. What's wrong with you?" I got arthritis in my hip. And he started the process.
That's good.
Yeah.
So where do you end up?
Dr. Walt.
Where did you leave from?
Where do I go home from?
Yeah.
Lewisburg camp. I was at the drug program.
And you completed the drug program?
Yeah, I did,
Everything
yeah.
was good. How many years was it? That was 27 years out of 35.
So when I walked out the door, it was 27 years. That's my clothing line, right? 27 straight.
How many years of good time did you lose?
I think I lost from the 2 assaults, because that's what I got found guilty of, was the 2 assaults. I think I lost, 3-4 months.
Oh, that's it.
Not bad.
For all the trouble you were getting into, that's it.
Well, you know what? In Wyatt, right? It was a private facility. Thank God they didn't follow you to the feds.
Yeah, it doesn't count against
Doesn't
you.
count. And I didn't know that, but thank God it didn't follow me.
So you get out after 27 years. Tell us about that. What is that like? What's the biggest difference, and what's the first thing you're doing?
So, I'm walking with a box of property down there. My friends are yelling, "Yeah, don't worry, but you don't have to go. Just come, walk right through. Come to the parking lot. Fuck it, your time's up. Don't worry about them people." They're just busting my balls, And so, like a lot of, and I don't want to sound like, I've got, Stockholm syndrome, right? But there was a lot of great people that worked in these places that I met along the way. And one of them was a counselor at Lewisburg camp that, to have an impact on people, it's the greatest thing. It's the greatest gift that God has given me, is to have an impact on people, because they tell me I do, you know what I'm saying? So, and this action that this officer made, they processed me out, whatever, see you later. Everybody's saying, see you later. I had, good rapport with everybody. Don't forget, I've been in jail 27 years. There's lieutenants that call wardens and say, "Hey, what's up with Bartolomeo? How's he doing?" You know what I'm saying? That became wardens from offices. I've been in the system that long. So this one counselor walked me out. And, unheard of that you shake anybody's hand. Usually, in a prison setting, I would never shake an officer's hand. He walked me out. He goes, "Come on, I'll walk you out, Bartolomeo." Just a great guy, been there forever. I was his orderly. We had a lot of laughs together and, a lot of time together. I worked for him. He was just a decent fellow. And he shook all of my friends' hands, and he shook my hand, and he goes, "Yo, this guy is a really special." You weren't telling my friends anything, but he said, "This is a special guy right here, man." And, my friend Gio, my friend Mikey, and my friend Leo came to get me, and it was just people that I had known my whole life that were there to get me. And it was just, listen, the day that I walked, I still feel the same today. Like it's still amazing to me. It's still such a tremendous, I'm high on life Really, it's just been such a tremendous whirlwind for me. Like, I feel like I've been so blessed. Like, I waited for like almost 5,000 days for my day to come, and it never did. But I still fought, and then when I finally had my day, it's amazing.
What's something that you expected this world to be like now, and it turned out it wasn't like that?
I thought I'd have 1 million broads, but I don't have any. And I thought money would be hard to come by, but I'm, with my clothing line, I'm making a few dollars a day, So that's really, to be honest with you, right off the hip, that's what I got for you.
And how do you come up with the clothing line? I know you said where the name, but why did you start it and tell people where they could find it too?
So the thing is that my brother Charlie had a benefit for me, okay? And he made these shirts for me, and they had FJB, and on the back it said Free Johnny Bart. So the time never materialized, meaning the party never materialized. And when I got home, he said, hey, I got a box of shirts in my office. Why don't you sign them and sell them? I almost spit my coffee out at him. I said, who the fuck is going to buy a shirt with my name on it, right? So I signed them and I sold them, and I was on Instagram, and I found out the power of Instagram, and I was like, wow, that's amazing. So I was always playing like with numbers, and I always say that when I began to learn, I began to have self-worth, and when I began to have self-worth, I began to dream big, and I began to dream about, and while I was in jail, about writing a book, and thinking about how it would be, and sitting here with you today. I didn't even know who you were, but I figured I'd be sitting down with somebody. I dreamt big, I dreamt that I could be a brand. You know what I'm saying? So, and once I sold them, I was always toying with this 27, right? Because that's how many years I was going to be in, STR8. And I wrote it down one day, and I was like, that's pretty clever, 27 straight with the letter at the end, with the number at the end. So that's, when I sold all those shirts, I made a hoodie. And on the back I wrote, I've often regretted my words, but never my silence, with a big Boston B with my signature, right? And those sold. And I put 27, I got to put 27 STR8, and then the signature works, so I put my signature on every shirt. And thank God, right? People, there's a demand for it. Like, I always say it's so humbling, right? It sounds so cliche and so corny, right? But it is just so humbling that, I got my man Bean Shooter made a guest appearance, right? Throwing fucking rocks at the fucking air conditioner, right? But I've been in the North End with Mike Lee, Bean Shooter. He become a great friend with me, right? And he kind of put me on the map with Instagram. Everybody's like, Bean Shooter, Bean Shooter. Now, like, people saying Johnny Bart, because, I was with Mike, and we kind of fostered this relationship through my friend Ika, which Mike wanted me to be on his podcast, which I was, of course, and we've just, I always say that the most important thing for me is building relationships, the relationship I have with you now, the relationship I have with people. So I think that's the most important thing. And, through this networking, Mike wears my shirt, people will stop buying stuff off my, website, hopefully that'll happen. You know what I'm saying? And I have a link that, I can put up when this comes out.
Yeah, we'll put it in the description for you.
And, it's official _Johnny_Bartolomeo on Instagram. And, follow me. I got like almost 6,000 followers. I think this is the greatest thing in the whole world, right? Everybody's like, I've been on Instagram for 10 years. I got 300 followers, 400 followers, 1,000 followers. So I think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. And I've met a lot of great people, and it's just been, a whirlwind. It's amazing to me. It's a tremendous, tremendous experience. And that's like, in closing, like, if I could say something in closing, like, your day is going to come. I waited almost 5,000 days for my day to come. Got shot down every minute, went beat down, but I just kept fighting every single day. And I kept doing my thing every single day. You know what I'm saying? And I started to envision that the day would come. And it came for me, man. And it's just the greatest fucking thing in the world, man. I'm so blessed.
Now, you came from an era where there was none of this. Like, guys were coming out of prison. They're like, what we're sitting down now doing, this wasn't acceptable.
It wasn't even a thing. You were a pariah when you come out of prison, right?
Is it weird to do that coming from your time?
So, again, right? The biggest thing you could ever take away from me and talking to me is the only thing that's constant is change. So everything changes, right? So if you're fluid enough to be, ready for that change and to take advantage of that change, I think that's who has the advantage, right? In Eastern philosophy, they say be malleable, right? Be like water, and you can adapt to anything. And I think there's a lot of power in that. And I think it differs a lot from Western philosophy in that vein, So to me, I just re-educated myself to be malleable. As difficult as it is, people my age and Mike's age, right? We're 55 years old, 56 years old, 60 years old. People are bitter at the world. They can't enjoy their lives. I don't never want to be caught in that trap. I just want to enjoy my life.
What are the psychological effects you think you've seen from doing that many years in prison and then coming out?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's a question that, has a lot of different answers to it. They're manifold, the answers. But one thing I can say is mental health is real because I suffered from anxiety. That's what I got this diagnosed with. I remember one time I had like this weird period of deja vu and it just kept, perpetuating. And I was like in my head and it was just weird. And I was sweating and I was racy. And then, I had another episode where I looked outside my cell door. I was in the shoe and I just forgot completely where I was, and I think that's an effect of prison, And so mental health is real and psychological effects are real. I mean, I always try to rise above my situation. And I always try to be, view my situation as a third party and just try to stay and just be like, hey, John, listen, this is going to happen. Just go with this. You know what I'm saying? You can get through this. If anybody can do it, you can do it. So a lot of positive self-talk as a result of the psychological experiences that I had that were not so comfortable.
Now, we heard about, young Johnny at the beginning of this episode. Now that we're at the end of it, do you think that you are the same person that went into prison coming out?
I mean, I just not even in prison, out of prison, I'm definitely a different person, right? But, and somebody asked me this, and I thought it was a very good question, but I regret that I lost my mother, my father, my brother, but I'd never want to be anybody else but Johnny Bart. That's the way I feel wholeheartedly. And I'm 100 times different person. I went from living an antisocial life to living a pro-social life and building relationships. That's what I do. And I'm so blessed to be able to just make that transformation. And I don't know why, and I told Mike this, and I think on his podcast, I told Jeff the other night that I got the guy that was supposed to be on the plane, missed the plane crashed. I almost got survivor syndrome because I got guys like Kevin McTaggart that are still in jail from 1984 and they're still in jail. And they don't have this tremendous gift that I've been given. Because if I got what I deserved, I'd be dead 100 times over, right? I'd be hanging somewhere with getting whipped. You know what I'm saying? But instead I've been blessed.
Do those thoughts keep you up at night at all?
I sleep good.
Good. Well, Johnny, thank you so much, man, for
it
this
was a
opportunity.
Pleasure. Mike, thanks for interrupting us. Throwing fucking rocks
Thanks
at the fucking...
rocks. Well, everyone comments on my YouTube, we need a bean shooter interview, so this is his cameo.
Listen,
we got a cameo.
We got bean shooter.
Dude, he's a legend, too. I don't know who's more of a legend here, him or you.
No, he's a fucking Boston. He's a Boston icon.
You guys are both legends.
He's a Boston icon.
Listen, I wrote on my Facebook earlier, going to Boston to interview a former Hell's Angel, and I didn't say your name, and all the comments are Bart, local legend, Bart, Bartolomeo, legend. That's crazy.
So listen, you know what the crazy thing is? Here, I got interviews for you, right? Yeah. I got Nicky Verano, right? He owns Strega, right? And let me tell you about Nick. Nick's a close friend of mine. I want to give him a shout out because this guy, right? And there's one thing I didn't know about him. I was telling Mike, never drank a drop of alcohol in his life. And his greatest accomplishment in life, forget about the restaurant business, he's made two of the greatest human beings you would ever meet on planet Earth. Nico is his son. He's got Sweat House. He's got a couple of restaurants. And I try to think to myself, would he treat me any different? Because he treats everybody so good. He's such a wonderful kid. His daughter, Marina, right, is probably she's the prettiest girl on the face of the planet, right? But his wife is beautiful, Michelle, too. So, I mean, these kids, it's just the conclusion that I've drawn from being back, talking to him and, just a great guy, took care of me, all his friends, tremendous connections. But this guy has made two of the best human beings on planet Earth. Forget about what he's accomplished in the restaurant business. This guy's a great guy. So proud to say I'm a friend. We talked to another friend of mine today, right? Who did we talk to? FaceTime, Sean O'Brien.
Yep.
Right? He's a fan. Sean O'Brien said, that guy Ian Bick, I love him.
From Teamsters, yeah.
So these are the people that I associate with myself from not living an antisocial life no more to living a pro-social life. These are the relationships that I fostered.
And now McLovin.
And listen, this is a great one too. And listen, it was listen. Thank you for coming to my house, man. I had a blast today. It was
Good.
great.
I'm glad. Hopefully, it was something different for you. You know, I know you were nervous about what questions I was going to ask you, but I think I did good.
I think you did amazing. Let's hope it's
Awesome.
great.
All right. Thank you, Johnny.
All right, buddy.